Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri, and today we're going to answer a subscriber's question here. Versace10 asks, do you think it will still be worth it to become a quant in 8 to 9 years? Is it valid for a current high school senior to try to become a quant? Yes, it is an amazing career field with a ton of opportunity and a lot of growth coming up. Yes. I cannot say that enough here. So let me rewind you guys a little bit here. I'm average middle-class American, again, going through, generic public schools most of my career, finishing out the last 3 years of high school in a private school, for a variety of reasons here, and then going to a general state school, like at Washington State University, shout out, go Cougs. Right, average, middle of the road school. Again, I did very well at WSU though, and I took interesting classes, and I transitioned, and I got into the University of Michigan, and I had an offer from one of the top math programs in the country as well. Shout out to Harvey Mudd and Claremont. But there is a ton of growth in quant finance, and I think we're like sleeping on this because people just don't understand what quant finance is. So today I'm going to answer this question, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about risk management because I keep getting people asking the question, Dimitri, why don't you go get a real job in quant finance? Why did you choose to do risk management? And they're like scratching their heads like they can't figure it out. So let's answer those real quick here. First off, what is quant finance? So I'm going to define this again, and then we're going to think about this more analytically before people ask these sorts of questions. But what is quant finance? Quant finance is applying the scientific method to finance. That's all it is. So we're going to use math and stats, which if you look at any sort of research program, PhD, you name the field, any PhD has to learn some basic probability and stats to do any sort of research. It doesn't matter if you're taking like soft sciences or hard sciences, you're going to have to learn statistics. So statistics is core to what quants do. It has been downplayed by the masses as we have seen kind of a off the rails, I'm going to call the fake quants pushing nonsensical jargon throughout the years, which I'll talk about here in a second, cough, cough, with derivative pricing and options. But what is quant finance? It's using that math and stats to really explore deep ideas in quantitative finance and make predictions here. So let's start off with those derivative option pricing here, and then we'll back into what is real quant finance, and then what is the mumbo jumbo hand wavy stuff, and why this means there's a massive career in quant finance here. So let's think about this, right? You read the books like The Volatility Smile. Emmanuel Derman has probably one of my absolute favorite comparisons and discussions around pricing. So I'll put a link below if you're interested in that book. It's called The Volatility Smile. I think he does a much broader view of discussing quant finance. It's not really as textbooky as I think a lot of people think it is. There is some math equations in math, but he does a great job at actually communicating and talking like a normal person in the book. So I think it's easy to understand. And what's important in this is his analogy is talking about a derivative is nothing more than like a fruit salad, right? There's a thing called replication. So we can do replication of an option's payouts. So you start to think about derivatives. So let's define what an option is real quick. An option is the right to either buy or sell a stock at a specific price, and it has some sort of time window. So, there's Europeans and Americans, depending if you want to wait to the expiration date, which is European. An American is you can exercise that option, the right to buy or sell, the option to buy or sell in a specific sort of window here. Now, again, the fruit salad analogy is great. So you can actually buy the stock, which is the underlying asset on this. So say the option is I can buy Tesla for $50. There needs to be some sort of price though. Like how much is that option worth? And say it's within 3 months. So you would look at this and think, okay, across the life of the stock, where is the best place to execute that? Let's just pretend we're doing Europeans though. So Americans, you can exercise that option to buy or sell anywhere in those 3 months. Let's just do Europeans to keep it simple. Let's say you can only buy or sell at that 3 month date. So let's just say, I don't know, we're going to say it's April 15th or something. And so that is going to be that 3 month date. Now, the question is how much is that option worth at, April 15th? Like that's the question that we're trying to figure out here. But there's a replication to that, the same values, the same payouts. So that's the expected payout of that sort of option here. Can be replicated with stocks and bonds, which we're going to call I'm going to call them bonds, but it's some sort of risk-free rate here. Now you can combine that underlying Tesla stock with, some bonds, and you can replicate across time. And what you essentially see is that you can replicate the exact same payoffs by buying and selling the fixed income product and that risk-free rate in that stock here, and you can actually get the same payout as an option. It's called a synthetic option. Now, we're going to hand wavy here and pretend there are no transaction fees. The world operates perfectly. There's a bunch of assumptions baked into this, right? It is a model, like statistics, right? There are assumptions that go into these models. There are a bunch of hand wavy assumptions that we need to hold for all these things to be true. And that is more or less an option here. Now, what we teach as quant finance here is we often say, oh, quant finance is financial engineering. No. Financial engineering is one piece of quant finance. Quant finance is applying the scientific method. Derivatives, options, and all that is one little tiny piece of this. So financial engineering, again, is using math and statistics to actually model this. That is what derivative pricing is doing here. Again, you can write out the Black-Scholes equation. So there is an equation that was discovered through research and given a bunch of assumptions, just like statistical assumptions. These assumptions, and many of those are statistical assumptions like normality and whatnot, they all have to hold for that equation to work. Okay. Now let's take this now to what I'm going to say is quant adjacent here, working at the banks on the sell side. So firms that first did this were firms that were on the sell side doing real, true financial engineering derivative products like options and forwards and futures and swaps and all kinds of stuff like that. So they were engineering some sort of product here. Now let's take this a little bit away from this traditional viewpoint here. Let's say instead of you issuing an option to buy something, right? So a derivative here, a European call or a European put or something. What we're going to look at is you're going to issue a loan to a consumer. Now imagine the complexity behind this. Like, I don't think a lot of people think about this, right? So some Tom, Dick, or Harry, some random person waltzes through the door. You're sitting there as a used car salesman or a new car salesman or a mortgage officer or a credit card company at a bank or something. The guy walks in and says, I need a loan for, I don't know, $38,000. Can you give me a loan for $38,000? Right, you're going to need some information about this individual. You're going to need to think about this, right? And I can't tell you who this person is. Like, I just don't know. So what is the likelihood this person is going to default? Well, to do this, you need a model, right? So let's back through this again. What is going to be the payout at the end of the life of the loan? Now, this is more or less like an American option because a loan really has three optimal states here, right? A loan pays off in full. Everybody cheers. We're all happy. We got our money. We made some interest on it. But that often doesn't happen. A loan also can prepay, which is a really, really good financial decision for the person that has the loan. But now the institution or that bank that's issued that loan lost money here. So that's another state. And then finally, you have charge off, which is that I'm going to call it an option here in a way. The default was executed at some random point in time. But I don't know, right? If they defaulted in 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, let's just say it's a 60-month loan here. So that's a 5-year loan, which is actually fairly common these days. So they have this time of 5 years to default. When are they going to default? And when they do default, how much is that worth? What is the payout? What is the option? Do we make money? Do we lose money, right? It's the same thing. If you start thinking about this, right, it's the same thing as like a derivative product. There are unknowns that we have. We need to figure out what is the payout for this. And so often we model this out backwards. Instead of modeling out payouts, we model out losses. Okay, so I'm not modeling the profit, I'm modeling the loss. Now, the loss piece is, how much cash am I going to collect? How much interest and principal is all going to get paid down? And then I'm going to start thinking about, if they do default, how much is that vehicle worth at default? Right? I mean, it's a $38,000 loan. Let's say it was on a $40,000 car, for example, and they default, I don't know, halfway through it. So now the vehicle, let's say the valuation just goes linearly down to $20,000, which it doesn't. It exponentially drops, especially on new cars. Used cars would be a little bit, flatter, but that's math and stats. And anyways, and so what we're talking about here is that if they default and now the car is only worth, let's say that $20,000 instead of that $40,000, right? I'm not going to collect, again, the interest payments on the end of it. Also, now I got to go sell that car at market or an auction. I'm going to lose money on that most likely. And let's say we can't even repo the car. What if I can't find it? What if I spend $5,000 going to find the car? Well, if I got to pay a bunch of companies $5,000 in fees and transactions and repossessions and all that, now that's another cost. So that $20,000 car has an auction fee. It has all these repossession fees, and you back all this out, and you might only get a couple $1,000s for the car. Let's just say there's 20,000 left on the balance. You get, I don't know, 10,000 back. You're going to be taking losses now, right? Because you ended up putting up $40,000. You only collected 20 in the actual payments, we'll say in principal. We made a little bit of profit here with interest. And then you back out and you take off again part of that. The $10,000 we collected after we repoed and paid everybody back. I got $30,000 back on a $40,000 or a $38,000 loan, right? Car's valued at $40,000. The loan is for $38,000. So you take $38,000, you minus the $30,000 we've collected, you lost $8,000. Now I can tell you from interest rates, you're not going to collect $8,000, especially if that defaults halfway through, right? It's not going to be that profitable of a loan, and you're probably going to take massive losses. Now imagine a customer wrecks the car or the car breaks down and the customer just at this point doesn't want to pay for it and says, come pick it up, I'm not paying for it, right? At this point, you lost a bunch of money on this car. Now let's go back to quant finance here. How do you know what that customer is going to do? Right? You need a model. Well, we create statistical models. They have assumptions baked in. We pull a bunch of data and information, which we pay a bunch of money for. And we get all this data and we bring all this information in, again, financial information on these customers to try to make a decision. We make the decision and then we got to wait to see what happens with that sort of loan here. It's kind of like an option. You make a decision, you've got to wait to see what the consequences are going to be here. Now, again, you still have an equation, you still have assumptions, just like we did with option pricing. Right? It's the same thing. I'm just loan pricing. Same process here. Again, it's this unknown, it's this randomness. Now, consumers are even more random than stocks, right? Stocks, they're pretty random, but consumers are even more random. But the advantage we have with the consumer side is we have so much data often. We have millions of records often and thousands of variables we can pull in. And we're trying to put this together. But to do this right, you can see when you have all this data and all these variables, right, on these consumers, it gets complicated, right? It gets mathematically complicated here. So again, we are doing science on finance. This is what quant finance is. Now, what is risk management? Well, what I just described to you at a bank, the guys that are developing models to do all that, that's risk management, right? There are no quants at banks. We just call them risk managers because we don't want to waltz around telling regulators and the public, hey, look, I'm this big swinging quant from Wall Street and I just bankrupted, let's say Silicon Valley Bank. It just went under again. All these quants screwed us up. Like, quant is a very, very dirty term. The Wall Street days of the guys with, billions of dollars and they're sailing on their yachts and flying all over and golfing and just not doing anything. That sort of mentality has ruined the industry, and it does not exist the way it used to exist. And even those movies, I cringe at in many ways. There's so many lack of truths in many of these. They've been exaggerated to make them even crazier, or it's the one-off guy that does this. But you can see here that this is another problem that banks have. Now, banks also do like wealth management, right? Wealthy customer comes in the door. They say, hey, Dimitri, let's say you're doing wealth management. You're some sort of quant here. I need to manage this portfolio of, say $380 million. And so we need to figure out what we're going to do with this money. Well, there's asset allocation. That's like buy side. That's like investing. Well, those sorts of services, again, need models. So you would go and look at optimizations, which is math. There's a lot of statistics and probability. So have a hard time pulling probability out of statistics, right? They're two halves of the same coin. So again, doing statistical modeling and math is real quant work. Now, again, I haven't talked about optimizing anything. I haven't talked about coding. All we're doing is math and stats at this point, right? We're just trying to figure out what's happening here. Now, as we get down this rabbit hole and we start to move on, there are other pieces that come into the picture here. So, we've been building statistical models. They're really challenging to build. Most people aren't qualified to build them. Talked a little bit about this. Again, you rush through a year and a half master's program. If you're lucky, you hit a 2-year master's program. You still need a lot of on-job training to learn all this information because I guess you can't really see. But over here on this bookcase is about $40, maybe $50. That's still not enough. There's still tons of information I don't even know. And so being a quant is trying to look at new methods, new methodologies, absorbing all this. And this is where AI and machine learning comes in now. So who do you think at these funds and, funds, banks, all this, who do you think is doing this? right? The quants are out there building them. I build machine learning models at work, and I cringe when people say like, oh, you're a data scientist or a machine learning expert. No, please don't label me with that. There has been way too many people claiming to do that have not done that. That is the same with the quant world though. Now I'm starting to like, I don't know if I want to be called a quant. Again, machine learning and AI is model development. Machine learning is nothing more than a small segment of statistics that's been relabeled by the computer science community. And the computer science community is like, how can we optimize this without taking any responsibility or thinking these sorts of things through, which is what I often find. Now, pump the brakes a little bit. I understand there are ethical, responsible computer scientists. There are really good data science programs out there, but they're far and few between, just like the quant programs. There are far and few between that are just amazing programs out there that are teaching high rigor, that are really focusing in on the students and the academics here. But again, who cares about optimizing, right? We need to understand the problem here. And that's what you should be learning in a financial engineering or quant finance master's. Specifically when you do derivative pricing, right? You start to realize these programs spend a lot of time discussing things like deltas and gammas and vega, which are all the Greeks. And of course there's theta and a bunch of other ones. But you start to look at this problem, this simple problem of an option, you dive deeper and deeper and deeper into these layers. This is what loans, this is what credit cards are, this is what securitization markets are. So what nobody else wants to talk about, right? What blew up 2007, 2008 was the quant's fault. Well, there weren't derivatives, they were mortgage-backed securities. Mortgage-backed securities are just taking loans and pooling them together, right? So again, you can say, well, they're engineering derivative products. I guess you want to consider an asset-backed security, ABSs, or mortgage-backed securities, MBSs, and all that stuff. Again, that's sell side. There are people that are actually originating, designing, looking at origination strategies, corporate strategies, putting all these things together. And then you often have securitization teams that actually go in and evaluate and give it their second layer of defense here opinion, or kind of their validation opinion of, given all this information, there might be some simple models involved in this. Given all this information we have on these loans and the firm and the company that originated the loans, this is what these payouts are going to look at. And then you create the tranches, right? The A tranche, the B tranche, the C tranche, and like the D tranche. And again, securitization products and all this. This is all what I'm doing in risk management. Right? I'm just working in securitization, working in modeling, working in loans, working in consumer credit scores, working in operational risk, which is just building models to figure out who is going to default and when. But again, bringing operation into this, operational risks such as fraud risk. So again, did somebody commit fraud when they originate a loan? Often you have people that steal social security numbers. They have fake addresses. Companies might be set up as shell companies that are actually frauding banks. The fraud market, though, I think for over 20, 30 years now, it's been a while. They've been using ML. They've been using a lot of tree-based models. Now, we use a lot of tree-based models as well. Again, both in fraud and in other areas of the modeling framework here in the quants that different firms have been at, in banks. Even the big global banks are light years ahead of many of these startups and fintechs because they've been doing machine learning for a while. They're just not pounding their chest and saying, look at me, I'm a machine learning data science expert. They're blending together the data science, the machine learning, the stats, and all the pieces that quants do. And then we're all just, quietly behind the scenes programming and coding here. So where does the programming come in for the quant side? Again, I have an idea. I have a problem to solve. I need to understand the finance and the theory. I need to understand the math and the theory of that, the stats and the theory of the stats, and then putting all these pieces together. And to test all this, what do I got to do? I got to code it out. So to code all this out, what I'm going to be doing is picking some sort of language, whether it's SAS or MATLAB or Python or, some sort of high level language where I can execute and test my ideas quickly on these data sets to figure out that math equation, like the Black-Scholes is a math equation. Now, if you know anything about firms that trade options, for example, on the buy side, they're often trying to figure out what is a shortcut or a better method to get more accurate pricing for the Black-Scholes framework here on options. How do you price options faster and better here? Now, this is where speed starts coming in, right? So now you have quant devs. Quant devs are going to be people that are going to be doing, again, the optimization piece of this, right? How do I make this faster? So if you're working in HFT, high frequency trading, you need to get things very, very, very fast. So you're working in C++ or C#. And then people go, okay, those banks, they're really old and boring, right? Bunch of stuffy old white guys in suits. No, banks are actually churning out thousands and thousands of applications for auto loans and mortgages and credit cards and, limit increases on credit cards and defaults and fraud models and a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes. And they want an answer like super, super quick, right? They want to know right now. And you walk in that door at that dealer, you say, I want that brand new, I don't know, Subaru Ascent like I've got, and you want that new Subaru, they got to tell you right up front, yes or no, and this is your interest rate, right? That is the price of that loan. And then you have to figure out the term of the loan, which determines payment, the amount financed. There's a bunch of moving parts in here that all have to be figured out and adjusted and fudged around to get the perfect deal for some sort of consumer here. So all these things go into this. They're still using C++ though, because or C# often, because most of us operate in Windows. You have to do this very fast, very quick. We need answers very quickly. This is where quant devs come in. Where quant devs are better than DevOps people is quant devs should know a lot of math. The stats piece isn't as critical because they're not doing research, but they need a lot of mathematics so that they can actually optimize things through mathematical equations here. So that is going to be the additional piece here with quant dev. Now I'm going to ignore trader because they're just a business person. Anybody at the end using the models is going to be a business person here. And again, I'm going to call front office quants. I don't really consider them quants. They are doing the strategy piece. They're taking the models and the business strategy and putting it all together and coming up with some way how to use these models to make business decisions. They're critical, but I don't view them as quants because they're not doing research or model development here. So as you guys can see, right, there's a lot of cutting edges to be working on. Machine learning and AI has been booming. My team is trying to get a grasp on these sorts of things through a very theoretical understanding and understanding what's going on inside these models here. We don't just wave our hands and say, well, it's a black box, it's too large, it's too complicated. Oh, well. No, there are a lot of regulations and rules involved in this. And then on top of that, right, quants, real quants that are really interested in the world, we want to know how things work. And so I need to know what's driving decisioning. I need to know why things are pricing things the way they are, or why it's picking up specific customers for fraud, or why it's recommending some sort of customer, the allocation of assets for wealth management here. I need to know these things so I can tell people and explain things and manage the risk around these. Models are nothing more than approximations to reality, and that is why we have risk management. Risk management is really just a really smart, in-depth quant who knows what the heck they're doing here. Unlike many of the people out there that are just, going in Python and saying, oh, we're going to use stats models, run logistic, and we're going to use PyTorch here, we're going to import a few things, we're going to make a few decision trees, and we're going to make some neural nets, and we're going to just haphazardly throw crap out the door. You're not a quant. You're not a risk manager, right? You need to really think about those risks in that management process here. So I see this field as huge and booming. I think in 8 to 9 years, we'll see even more jobs around this. A few of the drivers is going to be the fact that we are moving in and eating up all of AI and ML in the finance and banking realm here. We're starting to see, finally, it's been a long time, some very good academic, rigorous books on machine learning. That's finally starting to come out. And then we're seeing AI kind of booming. Some people are running with it. Many of the banks are saying, hey, let's stop and think about this a little bit more. The quants are even stepping back on the buy side saying, we need to do this very smartly. We can't just haphazardly implement these. But AI and ML is starting, and it's starting to boom. It is very misunderstood, which is why you see a lot of people throwing around the word black box. They're not black boxes, just math. And often the equations are way too freaking long for a human to figure out and understand. And so there's a lot of work to be done in that space. Even the traditional modeling and stats and math, like these problems, we can look at them and try to solve them in very unique and different ways. That is big and booming. So technology-wise, discovery-wise, there's a lot to research, discover, and do in the quant space here and that side. And then on top of that, I think we will continue to see a lot of consolidation with the banks, which drives me absolutely nuts. But also, I think we are going to see more bleed down of technology into smaller firms. So what I mean is, the big global firms you hear about in the news all the time, or even the buy side firms everyone knows about, you're going to see that they all know and use specific types of tools. Now, I would argue there's a lot to be improved upon educationally across the marketplace here in quant finance, because education is often thrown out the windows. We're trying to hurry and get some sort of solution here. But what I'm saying here is we're going to see now the regional banks. They were CCAR and DFAST years ago, like in 2014-ish, and then it got downgraded, I think like in 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. Maybe it was a little earlier than that, but somewhere in that range. A lot of the regional banks were no longer CCARs. They got rid of a lot of their quants. I think a lot of these smaller institutions as well. I talked to a few small banks on the West Coast, for example, and they're like, Dimitri, how do I train people to do model development? I only want to pay them like, $40, $50, $60,000, and that is it. I don't want to pay any more than that. And I'm like, well, too bad. To be this smart and to build these good models and to manage your risk properly, as a real institution should, you need more training, education, and help. And I think as we will see time go on, tools and educations will slowly disperse out to these smaller institutions. There is way too many quant finance programs being generated these days. I'm hoping they get smart and they realize derivative pricing is fun and exciting in the original, kind of quant finance, but we've blown up and moved into every other part of finance here. And now is the time to kind of shift your program's focus into better areas that have more jobs. And as we see that will probably end up happening, I'm guessing it's going to take them another 5-10 years to figure it out. But as that happens, there's going to be more and more people that are going to be available to work. I think smaller firms, as you start to go down the food chain to smaller and smaller institutions, are going to realize maybe just hiring 1 or 2 quants, pay them 80 to start churning them through into the mid hundreds. Seems like a lot of money, but they can actually reduce our risks, manage our loans, and make us more profitable with very minimal effort here. And so I think as we see that will grow as well. So technology research will be growing kind of out, and then we'll see depth growing as well as more institutions and more firms are going to be needing more quants. And then on top of that, a lot of people are retiring these days. A lot of people are changing jobs these days. I think the retirement piece, as we see the baby boomers going out, is going to start opening more and more opportunities as well. And someone's got to backfill them. And so there's going to be job opportunity for that as well. So anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed my rant a little bit here on why I think quant finance is going to be booming here in 8 to 9 years, why ML and AI is really just part of quant finance, and that's going to actually push and grow the field as well, and why there will be more jobs because more institutions will adapt these as technology becomes free and available, such as Python and R, and books and text and learning start to get a little more generalized into other areas of finance and banking. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And as always, until next time.